So now that we really understand just how this baseline affects us, our lives, and ultimately everything, let's talk a little bit about what it is exactly. Okay, what is having this 10 out of 10 baseline? What is abundance? What is happiness with a capital H, the state, not the emotion? What is being complete? What is being enough? What is the goal here? Okay, what is it exactly that we're aiming for? And as a little side note, don't get too caught up on words. Some people like to call this oneness, the divine, the infinite, the all. I just personally like calling it abundance. Okay, so what you have to understand when it comes to abundance is that one, you can't do anything to deserve it. Okay, there are no conditions, no requirements. It cannot be deserved. And two, it can't depend on anything. Okay, you can't do anything to deserve it, and it can't depend on anything. For if there are any requirements or conditions, or if it depends on anything at all, it is no longer abundance. Okay, abundance isn't something that you can achieve when you meet certain requirements or conditions and not achieve if you don't, because if you achieve it by meeting those requirements, you're always going to be worried about suddenly not meeting those requirements, putting you right back into scarcity. Okay, if you need something to not fall into scarcity, you're still in scarcity. If you need to have or do something to get abundance, you'll never fully feel abundance because you don't start with abundance. Okay, let this sink in. The only way to be in abundance is to start with abundance. You can't get there because that is implying that you're not abundant to begin with, reinforcing, as we discussed before, you're not enough scarcity, and it's acting within that paradigm. Trying to achieve abundance is reinforcing you're not abundant. The only way to get to this 10 out of 10 abundant baseline is to start there. There is no other way. Okay, and this includes doing abundance or thinking abundance or feeling abundance. Okay, because what happens if suddenly you're no longer doing abundance or thinking abundance or feeling abundance? It's gone. It can't depend on anything. Okay, and let that sink in too. You can't think it. It's not like, oh, I'm thinking of this and I'm abundant. It's not an emotion either, because emotions come and go. It's a state. It comes before all of that. Okay, it's not something that you get. It's not something that you do. It's not something that you think. It's not something that you feel. It's just something that already is. Okay, anything else isn't abundance. So abundance can only be something that you already have by default. For you to be 10 out of 10, the only way is to start there. It can only already be there. If it's not there to begin with, it's not abundance. And this is why I personally like to define it as our natural state of being. Abundance is our natural state of being. It's what comes before everything, before thoughts, before emotions, before actions, everything. Okay, remember the video game player analogy. Abundance is the state of the person playing the game. It's not found in the game, it comes before that. Okay, and as we talked about before, due to the way that we're conditioned, we've lost touch with this state. Okay, and we've gone sucked into the video game, we've forgotten this state, and we've built a paradigm and invested in a paradigm on having forgotten it. Okay, we're entrenched in the video game, trying to find the state of the player in the video game, which is why it never works. And one could argue that this is also why we're all seeking it. You know, we're all looking for this state. Why? Because it's what we are at a core beneath it all. We're trying to reconnect with our natural default state. We're trying to reconnect with what we are. So to recap here, okay, you don't have to do anything to deserve abundance, for it's your natural state of being, and it can't depend on anything as it's what comes before everything. Okay, and understanding this, you can really see, just looking around you, how we're all going about seeking abundance the wrong way. We're all looking in the wrong direction. We think that we'll get and achieve abundance through having or doing. okay, which includes thinking and feeling. When I have X amount of money, I will feel abundant. When I have the money, I'll feel abundant. When I have success, I'll get there. When I have validation and approval, when I have knowledge, that's a big one. It's like more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge. When I have more experience, I will finally feel abundant. I will have made it. When I achieve a certain goal, when I'm enlightened, when I get into a relationship, when I get married, when I have kids, when my kids get married, when I have grandkids, when I'm in good company, when I have a purpose, when my life has meaning, when I get this new thing, when I get this new object, when something goes my way, then I'll make it. Or when I do something, when I take action, when I hustle, I'm abundant. When I work on myself, when I meditate, when I'm grateful, when I'm forgiving, when I'm kind, when I'm giving, when I'm appreciative, when I'm thinking XYZ, when I'm feeling XYZ. Doesn't work. And this can be confusing because that's a lot of the advice you hear. Hey, you want to feel abundant? You want to feel 10 out of 10? Practice being grateful. Start a journal. Write down everything that you're grateful for every morning. Just start your day that way. But guess what? You don't get there that way because you depend on feeling grateful. You depend on that journal, reinforcing that there are requirements to get it, and you're not there to begin with. So it's not really abundance. If it can be found within the paradigm of scarcity, it's not abundance. And this is why nothing works. And then, of course, it becomes compulsive. You're like, oh man, I must always be doing my gratitude journal now. I must always be forgiving. I must always be giving. I must always be meditating. Meditating can easily become an escape depending on the place it's coming from. No matter what the thing is, even meditating or eating healthy or drinking a green juice, it's still reinforcing you're not abundant to begin with. Without it, you're no longer 10 out of 10. The assumption of scarcity still remains. And it doesn't matter how much you have or do. We think, man, I have a little bit, but when I have more, I'll make it. When I have more money, more success, when I'm more developed as a person, when I'm more improved, I'll get there. And that's not true. It's endless. Okay, in reality too, it just takes you further and further away from the goal, getting you more and more entrenched and invested in the paradigm that's built on that assumption of scarcity. Okay, you can't reach it that way because it's a different paradigm. Trying to reach abundance in the paradigm of scarcity is like trying to count to infinity. You can't. It's a different paradigm. Okay, and realize this too. If you depend on anything to be abundant, you're also enslaving yourself to that thing or circumstance, so you're not free. So it can't be abundance if you're not free. And because of the dual nature of the world that we live in and the fact that nothing is permanent, this is big. Okay, we live in a world of duality where nothing is permanent. There's always going to be that fear and worry of losing the thing that you depend on. Okay, there's always that little thought in the back of your head. How long is this going to last? When is it going to end? We're in a constant state of threat. And I want to emphasize this here, okay? Everything that we experience, everything around us, everything in the video game, if you will, has a dual nature, okay? In everything, there are two opposite aspects, two poles, if you will. There's hot, there's cold. There's day, there's night. There's large, there's small. There's hard, there's soft, there's black, there's white, there's noise, there's quiet, there's high, there's low, there's male, there's female, etc., etc. Okay, and because of that, our mind is defined by duality as well, where we filter everything that we experience through good or bad, right or wrong, this or that, should or shouldn't, and in turn our emotions as well, happy, sad, pleasure, pain, love, hate, courage, fear, etc., etc. Everything is dual. And not just that, we're in a world of duality, but nothing is permanent either. Okay, and what you'll notice is that there's a certain rhythmic swing that manifests between these two opposite poles. Okay, it just swings from one pole to another. It's hot, it's cold. It's hot, it's cold. It's day, it's night. It's day, it's night. You feel happy, you feel sad. You're born, you die. That's simply the way the world works, and there's nothing you can do about this. Okay, just the way things are. No matter who you are or how powerful you are, you don't have absolute control over anything that's external. And this is, once again, the reason why, if abundance depends on something in the video game, it's bound to change. And even though if you have it, you get that little temporary high, there's worry and fear and threat in the background because part of you knows that it's only temporary. Okay, and this includes thoughts and emotions as well. It can't depend on those. And unfortunately, most people just live their lives this way, just swung back and forth, like grasping onto things and just not accepting or realizing that we live in a world of duality where nothing is permanent and they're just constantly let down. Okay, if you depend on something external, you will always be let down because, once again, the things that make you happy can also make you sad. If you're happy because you have a relationship, suddenly that relationship can end and you can be sad. The things that bring you pleasure can also bring you pain. If someone approves of you, they can also disapprove of you. You know, we think, man, if I just get so many people to approve of me, I can finally approve of myself and I'll finally be 10 out of 10. But that's not true. In reality, the more people approve of you, you may get that temporary high, but there's now that fear. What if they disapprove of me? How do I keep them approving of me? Okay, it's endless. If someone likes you, they can also not like you. You can't have the good without the bad. The very thing that gives you pleasure today can give you pleasure tomorrow, and eventually it will. Okay, anything that depends on something is always temporary and superficial. And a great book, as a little side note here, that explores this too, is The Kybalion, which I highly recommend reading as well. So abundance must transcend this world of duality. It can't be positive, it can't be negative, it can't have an opposite. For if it does, it is no longer permanent, it is no longer abundance. Okay? And this isn't about escaping duality either. As I mentioned before, you're still playing the video game, but it's coming from a different place. It's living from this state of being the player playing the game, not the character in the game. Okay? It's a state where it doesn't matter what happens out there. It doesn't matter the thoughts, the emotions, the actions, the things inside. It just remains the same 10 out of 10. Okay, nothing changes in here, no matter what happens out there. It's okay if something happens. It's okay if that very thing does not happen. We enjoy the thing, but we don't need the thing. We don't depend on it. Okay, our experience of ourselves is no longer situational. So give up on anything that's dual. Okay, start recognizing the dual nature of our world here and the fact that everything is temporary, nothing is permanent, so that you don't keep pursuing illusions, keep chasing phantoms the rest of your life. Okay, you will not attain abundance, you will not attain fulfillment by something or some action. And stop being so fucking stubborn. We're all so fucking stubborn. You know, you may need to experience many disillusionments before you realize this truth, but if you just look back on your past, there are probably a lot of things you thought would get you there that you got, and here you still are. You know, the example I love to use is a new cell phone. You get that little high with the new cell phone, you know, especially an iPhone. If you go to the Apple store, they let you open the box. It's like, would you care to open the box? And you're like, oh, yeah, you know, new phone. Like, the new phone. And when you take it out, you're like, whoa, like super careful. You get that little buzz. You're like, finally, a little taste of abundance, so you think. But if you're honest, there's still that worry in the back of your mind, like, how long will this last? How long until I get bored of it? How long till it falls? How long till I scratch it? And then a little while passes, and this phone means nothing. You could just throw it, and you don't even care. And then you're off chasing the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. You know, people go through this cycle where every year they're excited for the new phone, new phone, new phone. Did it get you anywhere? No. You're probably in the same situation now, chasing the next thing. Okay? Give up on trying to achieve abundance this way through having or doing. And this is something, as a little side note, that David Hawkins talks about as well, and many other spiritual teachers too, where they say that in most human beings' spiritual journey or progression, you go from having to doing to being, where in the beginning you think that it's what you have that'll make you fulfilled, that'll change that baseline to get to 10 out of 10. When I have the new cell phone, when I have the money, when I have the validation, when I have, say, success with women, when I have the girls, I'll be happy. And as you kind of progress, you realize, okay, it's not that. It's when I do. It's when I'm working on my purpose. It's when I'm appreciative. It's when I'm serving the world. And eventually you realize that you're still a slave to that. It's still in this world of duality. And eventually you reach being. Not having, not doing, being. You can only be abundant just by default. You can't get there. Okay? As I mentioned, this is not something that can be acquired or gained. It's not a result of anything. There are no requirements. Okay? You aren't required to achieve abundance. You are simply required to realize that you already have it. To realize that you are already abundant. To drop this paradigm of scarcity and the assumption that it's built on, which is, of course, easier said than done. But that's the goal. Okay? And this also means that this 3 out of 10, for example, baseline that we did in the very first exercise isn't your true default. It's just another illusion. It's underneath all of that you will find abundance. That's your true default. That's where the 10 out of 10 lies beyond this. And don't try to fully put this into words as well, or logically try to conceptualize what abundance is as it comes before all of that. It's pre-verbal. If you can put it into words, it's no longer abundance. And this can be hard because we're also stuck living in our heads, trying to trap everything into fixed ideas, trying to conceptualize everything. We have this map. We're like, the world must fit into this logical map that I have in my head. And once everything fits in, then I'll make it. I'll get it. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Except that some things you just can't conceptualize. You can't fully put into words. And be okay with that. Be okay with the fact that this isn't something that you can intellectually grasp. It's only something that can be directly grasped. Okay? And let there be some moments in life that remain somewhat mysterious. Let there be some things that are just unexplained. You can't fully fit them into this logical map. Okay? Life is all about the gray. That's where you'll find the gold. And I personally try to explain the gray as, in black and white as I possibly can, but this can't ever truly be explained in black and white terms. Learn to see what I'm pointing at with these words, these ideas, these concepts, as what we're all looking for. The goal comes before all of that.